People of Earth, Gig Host.
Gig Host. we play Gig Host.
Rolling.
Hi, I'm Willa.
Willa. I'm Marla.
And we are the Gig Host.
Guess who's here?
Who's here?
Susie, but I don't know her last name.
Well, yeah, this is my friend Susie Felber. Hi, Susie. Say hi.
Hi, I'm here.
I know.
I am so excited to be here. I'm already your biggest fan.
Oh, Susie.
I think the Gig Host podcast is fantastic.
Thank you.
And yeah, thanks for having me. But I hear that I'm the first comedian / actor person you've had.
You are.
Yes.
But before we get there,
Yes.
let's just do a formal, Susie's a brilliant writer and comedian, and I'm actually going to turn it over to her to list some of her highlights. Hit it, girl.
Yeah, there's too much. So I'm still performing and I'm still writing.
Right.
And you might have seen me on Late Night with Conan O'Brien doing the sketches back when the show was in New York. I was on
Wow.
MTV doing talking head shows. I was
Wow.
in a movie that you can see on Netflix.
What would that be?
First Time Caller.
Wow.
Yeah, I've done so many shows. I continue to host and produce shows. I hosted a benefit in December for a theater in Hoboken, the Mile
Right.
Square Theater.
Right.
So I really have too many credits. And I've worked for the past 9 years in tech as a global content director. That's a fancy title. And I work for ad agencies, and
Right.
I write commercials.
Susie, you're so
Do
lazy. You're so
VO.
lazy.
I've written a video game. Tina Fey was a voice on it. I wrote
Wow.
a bartending video game in the 90s. Basically, like you ladies, if I could write or perform for money, I would do it. And that's what we're here to talk about. I did some personal archaeology to dig up some of the crazy gigs I did. And I just want to say one thing.
Sure.
How did I get my start? It was because I could not. I graduated from college. I had been a performer. And we
Wait,
could
I
go
just
back.
have to stop for a
Yes,
minute.
stop.
Because you are, why do I even need to be here? Because you're answering my questions
Oh,
before
okay. Sorry.
You're the definition of a good gig
No,
ho.
it's fine
Stop.
with me.
Great. I'll stop.
But we'll get to everything that you
Okay.
want to say. So my first question is, how did you get to the point, what were the circumstances of your childhood that brought you to deciding that you would get up on a stage and perform?
I mean, basically, I burned with a white hot fire to perform. So much so, I desperately wanted to perform. And my mother,
Your whole life?
my whole life,
As a 4-year-old?
Oh,
even?
God, yes. I mean, at 4 years old, I thought I'm going to be Madeline Kahn. And I was imitating her, and I 100% knew. And I would perform in anything that I could perform in. And very much like you, Willa, I love hearing the stories that you guys told with your brother. But my older brother, 4 years older than me, he played piano, and I sang to it. I danced, and we created together. But in 3rd grade, I got the leading role in the Three Bears Against Pollution. Okay. But
Serious.
That's a great.
I don't mean to brag here, but
And she
then-
wrote it, too.
no, Mrs. Spector, the 3rd grade teacher,
Yeah.
wrote it. Maybe it was 2nd grade. Anyway, then they came to me and they decided more kids needed parts. So I only was able to be Act 1 Mama Bear. And then they got Diana Blooming as Act 2 Mama Bear.
Were you incensed about that?
I'm still insane.
And where is Diana Blooming today?
I don't know.
Nowhere.
Is she on Broadway? No.
No.
But how much did I burn? I was backstage watching Diana Blooming's performance of
Yeah.
Mama Bear in the Three Bears Against Pollution,
When you were
thinking,
8.
ready for her. If she had fallen off the stage and died, I would have been happy, and I would have run out and taken over and done a better job. I'm like, she's not getting the character at all. I embodied Mama Bear.
You know, I could so relate because Larry and I, my brother, audience, in case you don't remember, which you probably do, we went to this summer camp that had this incredible theater department. They had wardrobe, they had a wardrobe lady, and they had these two hippies and their hippie wives. And one guy was the director, and the other guy was the music guy. And every 2 weeks of the 8 weeks of summer camp, another class of kids would do a full-on performance, right?
Right.
But Joan Meyerson was there the whole time I was there. Blonde, blue-eyed, frickin' Joan Morrison.
I hate her already.
And she got every lead role. And then finally one year, they did Guys and Dolls, and she was going to be Adelaide, so I could be Sarah Brown. And I was so excited because Sarah Brown is at her heart a nerd, just like me, right? It was perfect. And then the older kids were going to do Man of La Mancha, but that turned out to be too hard for them. So the chick that was going to play Dulcinea, who, audience, if you don't know, is a hooker, and she looked like a hooker, you know, big Zoftig, big hair. They gave her the role of Sarah Brown because they ditched that production. And I was out again, and I was inconsolable. It was so brutal.
That is brutal. And speaking of that, I've played a lot of hookers. That was what I did on Conan.
Really?
But I am.
Oh, 'cause your hair.
Y'all can't see me. I am big boobs and big hair, and I got cast as a hooker and got paid to be a funny hooker
Right.
many times.
Was your hooker smoking cigarettes?
No, because I guess on TV, no.
Oh, right, yeah.
But none of my hookers were smoking cigarettes. I would have done
I'm
any
sure.
of it.
So back to 8 years
back
old.
to I'm on Long Island. So I did grow up on Long Island.
Where, I have to ask?
Jericho.
Oh, Jericho.
Everybody said, "Oh my God, you have an accent. Are you from France?" I'd be like, "Yeah, this is Parisian." Basically, my mother beat the accent out of me. She was from Queens. She grew up in Kew Gardens and Forest Hills. That's where she grew up.
So that's my
where
name.
Will is.
Yes.
Yeah, so she grew up in those two places because
Wow.
her family kept not making the rent and getting kicked out and,
wow.
whatever. But my parents moved to Jericho for the good school district.
Right.
And the funny thing is, like, we were the poor kids and my dad was a doctor. So,
Right,
like, I had
right.
friends who had horses and places to keep the horses. And, it was a very privileged place to be. I was exposed to so much great performance because my parents would bring us into the city that I really tried to run away from home when I was a kid to audition for Annie. My mother did not believe in stage kids. She was very much against it. She said, stage kids are fucked up. You're not, no, you can't do it.
And
She
now-
didn't say the word fucked up. She would have said stage kids are screwed up.
And your mother was an author.
My mother became an author. At that point, she was just writing for little local newspapers. But my mother later became a published author of romance novels. You can still find her books, Edith Layton. She
Right.
published over 30 novels and all that.
Fabulous.
But when I was a kid, she was just writing for newspapers and
Right.
raising 3 kids.
Only that.
Wow.
So, yeah,
You
move it
both
ahead.
you both had such strong moms, such,
That's true.
motivated moms. I mean, my mom was just a home mom,
Yeah, but there's something to be said for home mom because I love my mom dearly, but they couldn't really focus on your stuff because she was
As
so
much.
Her own stuff.
Yeah.
focused on her own stuff. I mean, there's good and bad to that. I kind of liked being ignored as the third kid with a mom doing a career. Like,
Because it left you to your own devices.
do you see my evil hands?
Excellent.
I like being left alone. And then I went to a performing arts camp on Long Island, which I would say saved my life. I think
Right.
I would have killed myself if I hadn't found Usedan
outlet.
Center for the Performing Arts.
What's
have you
it
ever
called?
heard of
I'm
it?
sorry, I
It's a day camp still going called Usedan.
Used that.
Usdan.
USDAN.
and Usdan.
And it's fantastic. And it had real working musicians, actors, artists who
Right.
are the counselors. And it's in the woods on Long Island, which is just like strip mall hell.
Right.
But this was magical. And some of my
How old were
great
you?
friends, I'm still friends with, are from there.
How old were you when you went there?
Oh, God. I started going at age 7 and continued until they wouldn't let me go anymore.
So you were really thinking Broadway, right?
I was thinking I wanted to be everything, right? I didn't think I'd be a musician. I did play music. I made a terrible, terrible life decision. I played piano, but my brother was already amazing at piano. So you probably know this. You got to find your own
Yeah.
thing. But he had terrible allergies. So, like, he couldn't do any wind instruments because he was always having hay fever and allergies. So I was like, if I go to wind, he can't compete with me.
So you did.
I did, and it's too much of a story, but I chose wrong. My best friend, Yusan Kim, we had agreed we're not going to play flute. the girls who choose flute are lame.
Right.
We're not going to do it. So I was going to choose trumpet, and she was going to choose something else. And then when they went around asking people what they wanted to play, all the girls are like, flute,
Yeah.
flute,
Yeah.
flute. And then Yusan goes, flute.
Oh,
and
no.
I looked at her with like laser eyes, like, what? You betrayed me.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they came to me, and me thinking I'm so ballsy and everything. I went, flute.
I knew she was going to say.
I chose flute. And Lizzo hadn't been born yet, right?
Right.
So, like, flute was not cool.
Well, there was always Jethro Tull. Okay. So at what point were you on a stage and they paid you for it?
That is a great question.
Thank you.
That is a fantastic question. Basically, I perform in college. I was not a theater major, but I get out of college and I know I want to be a writer and a performer. And
You weren't thinking comedy per se at that point.
I didn't have the guts yet. I was thinking it, but I didn't have the guts to do that. I was thinking acting and
Right.
writing. And I get out of college and I'm like, well, what do you do if you want to be a performer? You get a waitressing job, right? Well, here's what's hilarious.
do.
Is that what you did?
Oh, I did it, yeah.
Yeah. The money's good. It frees you up for auditions. Here's the problem. I could not get a waitressing job. Things got, and I had
That's pretty
experience,
sad.
but wait, I had
I did
experience.
too.
She got a comedic job to support her waitressing aspirations.
Kind of, yes.
Oh.
You kind of hit it in the way that I got really low because I kept applying and getting turned down. Well, it got so low that it was a little coffee alcove in a midtown office building lobby.
Right.
And I gave it my all at the interview. And I think I scared the man. Like, I was so desperate at that point.
Yeah.
And when I didn't get that job, I was so crushed that I couldn't get hired with a college degree serving coffee in a
an
midtown
alcove.
lobby
Unbelievable.
where there'd be like no tips. And
Yeah.
I went, if I can fail at these jobs I don't want, how bad can it be to fail at the jobs I do want?
Oh, wow.
And that is when I went on my first audition for a touring company that performed the classics. And I got the job.
You mean like Shakespeare, the class?
Yeah,
That's
the
a great
Shakespeare
story.
and the Greeks and
Great story.
and here's the funny thing: I
Wow.
wasn't a terrific actor. I think I'm a serviceable actor, but I'm not really very good.
And how old were you at this point?
Just out of college, I guess 21. I mean, I was just out of college,
Right.
And this company was actually pretty great, and they performed in New York City. They performed in public schools. They performed at a theater on 8th Avenue, the Pelican Theater, and I really enjoyed it. I got to perform Shakespeare and Antigone and
And
Medea.
it was enough to support you financially, or that came later?
It was kind of enough because I was living with my parents
Right.
and commuting in, so it was enough. But then, interesting, the stage manager, just when I joined, the stage manager quit. And they were like, oh my God, we need a stage manager. Now, I had no stage managing experience. In fact, I thought it was the worst, lamest job in the world. Stage managers are just people who probably just want to perform and don't have the guts. But when they said, oh, but of course the stage manager makes more than the actors,
Right.
I was like, could I do both? And they were like, well, we've never had that. And I went, great, I'll do both. And so
How'd that go?
it was great.
It was hard.
I mean,
probably.
it was really, really hard, but I made more than double what the actors were making. And I learned so much, and it set me on this weird path where after that, I did a lot of theater where I was performing, but I kept moving up in the stage managing as I learned how to do it.
Wow.
Like along 42nd Street, where there was like a theater museum there of these ancient theaters, but all they needed stage managers. And in fact,
So
I finally moved my way up to Lincoln Center, where I was co-managing a theater at Lincoln Center.
my head is exploding. My head is exploding.
Because
Hang on.
it paid a lot more money
wanna-
to stage manage.
I want to
than
ask,
act.
like, where you even saw the audition. Like, it was your first audition. Like,
Was
were you a
in
member of any?
backstage?
So you just
Backstage.
right, just a normal.
I just
backstage
answered an
kind
ad.
of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
just answered an ad.
that's how we met. We answered an ad, right?
Oh yeah, in Long Island Press.
Yeah. I mean, it was.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been Long Island Press that I honestly.
Well, actually, I met a guy at a party. You answered the ad.
Oh, he told you right.
Yeah, but it's so you're managing.
And how long ago was that? How many years ago that
We're not
when you
gonna-
guys first met?
we
You're
were
not
20.
Gonna say.
We're going to say that we were
19
20.
and 21.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
That's amazing.
And how old were you when you're stage managing in theaters on 42nd Street in Manhattan?
I'm just moving up in my 20s. but
Right?
I was under 25. And
Yikes.
And like I said, and then my best friend started managing the lighting situation at this theater at Lincoln Center. It's a little theater right by Juilliard. And we had to hire the crews and load them in and load them out. And so we got to see a lot of Broadway shows that were in development, that they would
Wow.
bring in the investors.
And you met people
I
because
met
you were there.
so many people.
It's like a great way in.
Wow.
Oh my God. I
Oh,
met so many people.
gosh.
And then I realized, okay, a lot of stage managers are people who want to be directors. And believe it or not, that's the one thing I've never wanted to do. I didn't
Right.
want to be a director. I did want to be a writer, and I learned tons. And to be honest, I wasn't the flakiest person, but being a stage manager, everything that has ever benefited me in business,
Right.
when I've had to be an adult, comes from
Being a
being a
stage
stage manager.
Right. Just let me interject.
Yes, go.
You know, this is what happens to all of us in our freelance milieu, right? You start off thinking, I'm going to be a this. And then someone says, well, I'll pay you to do that, which is tangential to this. So we say, okay, it's not exactly what I want, but I'll do that. So then you learn how to do that. And then all of a sudden, 10 things.
But not everybody does. I think it takes a very unique person to learn how to do more than one thing. There are a lot of people who don't. And so I think the fact that you guys have and the fact that I did, that's a lot of people don't do that.
It's special. It's special
It
and
is
it's unique
special.
because some people, like, they go to one place every day for 30 years
Right.
and they know that they have that paycheck. It's the whole mentality is different. And then all of a sudden you're on your own little road that you're like marking as you go. You don't even know which way you want it to go.
I mean, I never wanted to be a recording engineer. That was like the last thing on my mind, right?
Right, but the more things you do, the more things you put in your toolkit.
Right.
And like you guys doing a podcast right now, it's really exciting and you learn from it. But I do think it's unique, and I don't think everybody does that.
For sure, that's true. Okay, back to your story.
No, back to my story was just that, yes, I had a crisis. Oh, somebody's phone was dinging. That wasn't me.
It wasn't me.
Um,
Marla.
sorry.
All right, so you had a crisis.
No, I had a crisis because my father had become what he really wanted to become, even though he faced outrageous odds with no parents and being an orphan and showing up in this country. My mother, with no connections, became an author. And then I was looking at my life and I was like, I never wanted to be a stage manager.
So is this at the point at which you decided?
I decided I literally had to go cold turkey from stage management. And I was like, all I ever wanted to do was write and perform comedy, but you didn't have the balls.
Right.
So you're going to do that.
And how old were you at this point?
I mean, I'm probably 25, something like that.
Well, that's pretty good because that's pretty early to realize that you're going off the path you want to be on.
Yeah,
some
and
people don't come to that.
It was hard when people pay you to do something that
Sure.
you don't hate. Like,
Yeah.
I got something out of it creatively.
Right.
But it wasn't what I meant to do. And it was very much a come down. I got a job
Is this your first-
demonstrating nonstick cookware in Macy's, the main Macy's, when they had the cellar downstairs,
Right.
and in Lecter's. Remember Lecter's?
I remember
it was a chain.
Lecter's, yeah.
And it paid great. It was something like $30 an hour
Wow.
off the books.
Wow.
To
How could
demonstrate.
Macy's do something off the book? Oh, because it wasn't
Because
really
it was
Macy's.
through the
Right.
the
It was
company
the other company.
that made the pans, and I actually enjoyed meeting all these people who worked at Macy's, and I would make pancakes and serve them up to people and show that you didn't even need oil.
Yeah.
Did they want you to be funny?
I had to be. It was performing,
Right.
So like I had to talk to people and just kind of
So
patter
it was
about
just-
the pans. So in fact,
Right.
you're right. It got my confidence up, just being out there with
friendly.
having to talk to everyone. It was like before I had the guts to do comedy on my own.
Because when you can make strangers laugh, it's very empowering. I mean, even just in our day-to-day lives in the store, I say something to someone and make them laugh, and it's like, wow, I didn't even know that person. But
Yeah.
you're
It
doing
was
that all day long.
So empowering. I think I started doing improv comedy at that point, which
you
like
doing,
crime
like-
doesn't pay.
Were you doing
like theater,
Upright
sports?
Citizens Brigade?
They didn't exist at that point.
Oh, right.
So I'm doing that job, loving it, and
Was the improv free, or did you get paid?
we only got paid when we toured at schools. But when we did like main stage shows in New York City, I don't think we got a dime.
Right.
But a friend from improv who is so wonderful, but she's so connected because her mom and dad are just both were big. Her mom was the founder of Nickelodeon, for God's sakes.
Oh, my God.
And her dad was a big TV producer, but I think she hooked me up and saying there's a production assistant opening at Comedy Central. Are you interested? I was like, heck yeah.
Right.
And that was my first job in TV. And as a production assistant, I got to write before they squashed the credits and sped them up, you would have a lot of time to fill.
Right.
And Penn Jillette, who is one of my favorite
As in Penn and Teller.
celebrities.
Yeah.
As in Penn and Teller. I flash way ahead. I worked with him again in recent history, but I got to write all the promos for him.
Oh, wow.
And record them at HBO or, sometimes we'd record together in person when he was in New York or he built a studio in his house in Vegas. And that was such a great job because I had to assist all the producers.
Right.
Such hard work.
So again, learning,
And do
learning,
my own.
learning.
And meeting.
Yeah,
all
learning,
these
learning,
people.
and
I
meeting.
met
meeting.
so many great
That's
people.
like the major thing, meeting all these people to me.
Working with artists, working with voiceover people, working with producers, hiring musicians to do music for on air promos. I also did off air promos, and it was about that time when they had a website, but most people did not know even what a website was or why
Right.
you'd want one.
Or even have a computer that could get
I know.
you there.
And the best thing I ever did was being at Comedy Central with this really hard job and finding out they were doing a website and they were like, we could really use writers. And I'm like, great. I just said yes. In fact, it was run by the guy who was a lawyer at Comedy Central, and it was run by him because he's the only guy who knew how to do HTML.
Right.
So like saying yes to that actually led to me continuing to work for Comedy Central after I left, and led to me having a technical background and web career and then
Right.
app career that other performers just did not have. So it was exactly at the time, and I'll flash you forward, Willa, to why we know each other.
Well, I was going to interject in
this
here.
is exactly we're getting to that point where
Right.
how we'd know each
So,
other.
audience, you've probably heard me mention the Triple N, Yale Triple N, before as the best bar ever in the world, in the history of the world. And that's how Susie and I met. And I remember at that point, you were working for Comedy Central when I met you. So that was that. So I'm going to tell the audience my favorite memory.
Oh,
'cause
please.
Of where we interstitched at the Triple. So the owner, Mike Kangro, who's a wonderful fellow, he would have every year Christmas in July. So like super, super hot. But we had a Santa. He would often come out as a Vegas Elvis. He would do that a lot.
Yeah.
And Susie would come and do a comedy thing because he also had comedy nights at the Triple. And I just remember this one time, Susie, you decided you were going to be a disgruntled, striking elf. So
Do you remember that?
I have no memory of that, but it
totally
sounds
remember
like
it.
me.
And you were wrapped in, at that time, the Triple Inn had the red and white checkered tablecloths like every Italian restaurant.
Yep.
So you used that. You created a dress out of one of those
Oh,
tablecloths.
yeah, I did that many times.
And you had the little green hat with the point and smoking a cigarette and just pacing back and forth on the stage, ranting about how bad conditions were at the North Pole, right? And that was your riff. And it was so great. And I never forgot it.
Thank you for being
Sure.
an outboard memory there.
Yeah.
So yeah, wearing the tablecloths. Well, I'll get back to wearing the tablecloths, but I just want to say that my memory of you is just, look, there was comedy night at the Triple, which we're going to talk about, and that's how I know you. And then
Right.
there was Willa and the bassinets, and I was just like, she's incredible. Like, she is incredible. And I would see you singing and on keyboards, and I was just like blown away by the talent.
you.
And I've always found that musicians are way too respectful of comedians, when musicians are the ones that really have to have talent to get up there and get paid.
I disagree.
Yeah.
No, I know.
Because comedians are my other favorite people. You know?
Musicians always like comedians outsized for what kind of respect we should get. We should get far less.
Well, here's two musicians that completely disagree, because we think comedy is so, like, you have to be so brave, because you're
up there alone, and you're writing your own material.
I know,
and you're
but-
creating this unique thing alone.
Right.
You know?
Yes, but if you tell someone, like, can you play the violin? You either play the violin or you don't. But, someone would never say, oh, I hope to play the violin someday.
Right.
But someone would say, I hope to be a novelist someday. You know what I mean? Like, with stand-up comedy, everybody's like, you could just physically get up there and do it.
Yeah,
but you can't
could.
physically.
But you could, you could suck.
I know,
So,
but...
all right. So what's the weirdest comedy gig you ever did?
I can tell
Can
you
I
the
look in
weirdest,
your-
but wait, I just
please,
want to say at the Triple that
Oh, yeah, at the Triple, yes.
The thing about the Triple Inn is I'm working at Comedy Central. I knew the Triple Inn had a long history of comedy. I knew that Freddie Prinze Jr. had started there when he
Right.
was 16.
Right.
I knew that Jimmy Walker performed there, and all the greats performed at the Triple. Before I had the guts to do comedy, I went on a crazy, like, reading every comedy autobiography I could read. From Fred Allen doing vaudeville before radio.
Right.
I read them all. And so I was kind of obsessed, and then I was like, wait, the Triple doesn't have comedy now. So I go in, I talk to the bartender.
So in all those autobiographies, did the Triple come up a lot?
There were a few where the Triple came up. So, and I knew from comedy history it was a thing. And
Wait,
I
I just...
yes.
Audience, I just want to describe this bar. This bar was on 54th Street between 8th and Broadway. So it was at this great place in Manhattan where there was this conflagration of different kinds of people. So Studio 54 was right across the street when it was still Studio 54. There were all kinds of post-production film houses, so movie stars would come in there. There were all the Broadway people would come in there. And it looked like any bar anywhere in the United States. It had sawdust on the floors. It had red and white checkered tablecloths. It was a real divey place, but...
And it had a kitchen, and it had regulars,
And the regulars were so amazing.
they were so amazing. And I got the guts to talk to the bartender and say, hey, I'd like to do a comedy show here. And he's like, well, we used to do a comedy show here. Gonna be honest with you, it got really bad, and the performers' lives were, like, in danger. I mean, that the quality
'Cause it
was
was so
bad,
bad.
and the regulars were, like, he was joking, not joking, like, worried for the performers to be, like,
Was that
assaulted,
Louis?
how bad it was.
Was that Louis?
No, it turned out to be Mike.
Oh, it
And
was
he
Mike.
said, I said, well, I promise you, it won't just be an open mic. I'll book it, and I promise you the acts will be really good. I don't know how I could promise that, because I couldn't promise that.
You lied your whole way up.
I did. I lied. I said it's going to be great.
And at this
But-
point, had you done comedy gigs by yourself, like stand-up gigs
I
by
had
yourself?
I had started doing stand-up.
Right. And how was
Sometimes
it
going well. I did character comedy. Sometimes it was going very well. And sometimes when I started to do stand-up as myself, in this terrible venues where nobody went except comedians.
Oh, yeah.
That's
I mean, they were the worst. And I refused to do bringer shows. And the reason I approached the Triple is, I don't know if you guys know what a bringer show is.
Yeah, when you have to bring your own crowd.
Yes, but
Where-
in comedy, it's
even harder than music.
They run all the big name clubs run on bringer shows,
Right.
and people don't know that, so they come to the bringer show, and that's why people will be like, oh, I saw a show at Caroline's, it wasn't very good, you know.
Right.
But then, like, Jerry Seinfeld would waltz into a bringer show,
Right.
and then the people who don't usually go to comedy would be like, but Jerry Seinfeld was
Right.
there and he was amazing, but comedy today kind of sucks, because they didn't realize these people had no stage experience, but they were required to bring 5 to 10 paying audience members, paying the fee and the 2-drink minimum, to get 5 frickin' minutes. And my goal was, I wouldn't perform at a bringer show. I refused. And I refused to host a bringer show. So, yeah, at that point, I was doing gigs, and they were mostly unpaid or paid in drinks or paid a few bucks, but I refused to do a bringer show. And
Well,
Mike
you know, that
said,
still goes on in music all
It
the
does?
time. Oh, yeah. If you have an original band and you want to play anywhere in town,
playing for the door, or the
play for the door.
charge.
And, or they want you to
Bucket.
guarantee you're going to bring so many people to the gig, or else you have to pay them.
Got ya.
I mean, they have enough places where you pay them to let you play.
Well, that's what I'm
right?
saying,
I
yeah.
mean, but like actually lay it out.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Any of the cabarets.
That's like
are
renting a theater. That's,
yeah, it's like Don't Tell Mom or any of those places. You have to guarantee them this much money up front.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, Mike said my dad would love that. Like, he went for my pitch. So flashing ahead, I start hosting and booking this show at the Triple, and so many of the people who did my show, I got Louis Black to agree to do my first show.
I remember Louis Black performed there before he was super famous.
Before he was super famous, but he was famous among comedians. That
Right.
was before he was on The Daily Show.
Right.
So a lot of people said to me, I'm not doing the Triple. That place is rough. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, Louis did it.
Right.
And they went, really? So Louis doing my first show. But then all the unknowns and all my little friends who did it, so many of them, I would say, hell, most of them are very successful comedy writers or performers now. Like a current or a former head writer of Saturday Night Live was one of my little friends who did Brian Tucker, who did the Triple. And then my brother came from Boston and he became my sidekick at the Triple.
Right.
My brother had
I
been,
remember that era.
yeah, so let's not talk about the Triple
Yeah,
anymore.
tell me about your weird
It was
comedy
great.
gig.
Okay, weird comedy gig. This one is maybe the weirdest.
Good.
When I got paid to perform in Rikers Island Women's Prison with a small group of comedians.
So it was like a review. It was comedians' review, right? You had a bunch of. It wasn't just you.
No, it wasn't just me. There were a few comedians,
And how much
I
time-
refused to do the men's prison. It was before you could Google somebody, but I was like, it doesn't seem like a great idea. So, and when we went there, I felt so bad. I was like, just open the doors. Half these women were in for drug crimes, you know, and possession or
Did you get them to laugh?
oh God, we did, and it was. What was funny, it was very edgy because after you have to go through so many layers of security
I know.
to even perform there. But then it's like being in a gym but with stands all around us and we're performing on the floor and
So you're looking up at your crowd.
yeah, and we were told no jokes about the warden, no jokes about this, no jokes about that. And
They would have probably really gone over well, jokes about the warden, right?
well, guess what? Somebody did one, open the door, and they went over so well.
I bet.
And it was like mayhem. So then we were just like doing jokes about the warden. And the warden and the guards are laughing their asses off.
Even
and,
the warden was laughing.
oh, yeah. It was great. And I
Wow.
remember I did really well. I'm not just saying that. I did really well. But who did better than me? A guy who's like legend now, Eddie Pepitone. There's even a documentary out about him. He's a little older than me. He's known for very experimental solo comedy. He'd do like The Swedish Clown and weird angry screaming. Like he did all this very downtown, Lower East Side alternative comedy. And the weirdest thing is the women, and he's not the most, let's say, typically handsome man. The women went crazy for him, and they loved what he was doing, and they started stamping their feet and going, sexy Eddie, sexy Eddie. I mean,
Wow.
it was just like the power of
Amazing.
art. They weren't making fun of him. They genuinely
They
ate it
loved
up,
him.
and that was kind of beautiful. So that was a crazy gig. I got paid for it.
How much did you get paid for it?
I think it was $50.
That's
We
not
had-
bad.
Yeah, we'd also performed for the offices of the prison system before that. And I was like, well, this is even more fun. And they took us in a van. We had to go in a special van to get to Rikers and do this
Right.
show. So that's a crazy show.
Well, you said something about a laundromat.
Yes,
So-
I did comedy in a laundromat. That show was a lot of fun. The audience would just sit on the washers to watch us. There were no chairs.
So in a
They're
situation
waiting
like
for
this,
their laundry.
wow. Wait, I have so many questions.
I mean, Japanese TV came out to profile the show when we were there
Okay,
because they were,
so question one.
is in Chelsea, in New York City.
That wasn't my first question, but okay. So it's a laundromat in Chelsea. Did they have a PA? Were you just talking, or did you have
we
a
had
mic?
a PA. We had a mic.
Did you bring your PA? Did you have to bring your PA?
The person who produced the show did.
Brought the
I
PA.
didn't.
Right. And then
Yeah, comedians don't have to bring PAs generally. Right?
Only when I'm producing, which even
Right.
for the show I'm producing now, I keep having to scare up a new PA every
right,
time.
because gear is our life, you know. So
I
that's-
might need advice from you. We'll talk about
Okay,
that
we will.
offline,
All
as
right,
they
and then my
say.
third question is: so if everyone's sitting on the washers and dryers, which sort of like face each other, Where are
and
you?
make noise.
Yeah, and make noise. Where are you in the room? Are you by the entrance?
We are by the front window. So people walking by the
Can
laundromat see the back of the comedian talking to the crowd, and the
The
crowd
sound of the
laughing.
machine. The sound of the
The
machine.
crowd laughing, sitting on the machines that are giving them a little vibration.
And so, did you get paid for this?
Honestly, with that show, if I got paid, it was so
Very
little
li-
that it
right.
wouldn't even.
I mean,
I mean, musicians always get paid.
No.
The thing is, or at least more often get paid. And comedians, I wouldn't do a bringer show, but to get better for the bigger shows where I did get paid, I would do shows for
free.
for practice.
for free. It's like a workout. You
Right.
need to get better.
You need to get in front of people to see what works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to fail first as a
Right.
comedian. How many
Yeah.
are funny the first
Yeah,
day and,
and
consistently?
I started doing the Triple In, and it was a free show. And Mike came to me after, I don't know how long, 6 months or a year, and he said, "We have to start paying you. I feel bad." And
Yeah,
I
Mike
go,
is-
"What?" Like, when has any owner ever said that? He's like, "You're bringing in business. I need to pay you." And I went, wow, my only goal was not to make any comedian pay. And the fact that then he was offering. So after that, I got paid a little bit. And as I brought in more people, I got paid more. And I
Right.
was able to pay some of my performers a pittance,
Right.
but
Still
buy
something.
them drinks. I
Yeah.
bought back drinks and bought them food. They needed food in those days.
Poor little starving comedian.
They were starving comedians.
I know. I was there.
So if you want to know another crazy show,
Sure.
I started hosting a lot of music gigs. For some reason, these band gigs where they had multiple bands, they liked me. And this lady kept hooking me up, with these.
So you were the comedian before the band?
I'm the MC
The
in
MC,
between
you-
bands.
Right. You,
Right.
you just keep the chatter going in between.
Keep
laughing.
it going, deal with anything that has to be sold or bartered or
Right.
get people to the bar. So the musicians just do their music thing.
Right.
And she was doing a benefit at the Hard Rock Cafe on whatever it was, 57th Street.
Right.
And it was for PETA, people for the ethical treatment of
Treatment of
animals,
animals.
and to benefit another charity that was a prevention of domestic violence. So I'm
Right.
like, okay, and it paid a little bit, and I liked the bands. Here's the crazy thing that happened: a fight broke out during
Wonderful.
it, and the fight
bar,
was
like at the
me.
bar?
This has never happened before. No, on stage.
Oh.
And I was hosting. There's some drunk white frat boy type in the front. Like, he was so drunk.
Right.
And he was being so rude. But he finally.
the audience.
From the audience. He finally came up on stage
Wow.
while I was hosting.
Aye.
And he assaulted me. And he knocked me to the ground.
Holy
He
shit.
punched you? Like in
No, he was trying to
pushed you.
He was trying to hug me, kiss me, and then he knocked me to the floor. And and there are big, burly security
Bouncers,
guards watching this
Doing
who did
nothing?
not step in.
Wow.
And he starts dry humping me
Oh
on
my
the stage.
God.
And then I just went crazy. I hadn't been in a fight since about 4th grade when I attacked Tammy Marcus with a hairbrush for saying something about my dead grandmother. And all of a sudden I went bananas, and he was drunk off his ass. I
Right.
rolled him off the stage, and that was enough, right? The guy
Right.
fell off the stage,
Right.
but he
Right.
was laughing when he fell off the stage. He was still laughing when
Because
he
he's
hit
so
the
drunk.
floor.
Yeah,
He didn't feel it.
I got off the stage and I just rammed him up against a pillar.
Oh, my
And I
God.
started. I
You
mean,
lost it. I know that
lost
feeling.
it.
So
I
were you
started
wailing on him?
kicking him. I started kneeing him in the
Wow.
balls, and he kept laughing.
And the audience, how were they reacting to it?
Oh, how do you think they would act at
Were
a
they cheering?
prevention of domestic violence? They were like, "Get the popcorn," and I was not myself. I was just like, "I
Wow.
can't believe this," and I finally just kicked him, and then finally a burly security guard was like, "Okay, you have to leave," and tried to rip him out of my hands and kicked him out the door.
Right.
And the guy was still laughing.
Wow.
That was pretty crazy.
That is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Just because we're hitting a time wall.
Yes.
So tell me your best gig, ever, if there is one in your brain.
I mean, an interesting best gig, I think it's when I was with a small group of comedians doing the Women's March in D.C. in DuPont. There was a big stage set up in DuPont Circle in the park.
Wow.
And I was one of the comedians, and A. Whitney Brown, I adore him. He was the host.
Right.
and he had driven his motorcycle there. And so it was comedians, it was bands, and then there were politicians who supported women's rights getting up on stage. And Gloria Steinem was one of the people that I ended up introducing. He said he had to go to the bathroom or whatever, so I started hosting. And then I got off the stage when another act came up, and he's like, they love you. You should host. I'm like, no, this is your gig. He's like, oh no, they love you. You should host.
Because it was a women's march, right?
It was a women's march.
Yeah, so-
And at that time, I was very versed in improv, and I love musical improv. And at one point, there was the van with the bloody fetus on it circling the park to intimidate us. And I started improvising a song
great.
about it. And then I got
sing
the thousands of people. No,
sing
I
it with
only
you?
remember one riff. It's just like, and we can sing louder than you. And we. And I got the whole crowd
Wow.
to sing along with my improv song and cheer and scream.
Oh, my
So that
God.
was like my rock star. And again, introducing Gloria Steinem.
Right.
And
How
all
big
that.
was the crowd?
Thousands of people. There were thousands
God.
of people in the park for this gig, that he let me host.
How
And that was my
generous-
rock star moment.
How generous of him.
It was so generous of him.
Wow.
And
That is a killingly good story.
and he wasn't doing badly. He was not.
Right. But you were a woman at a woman's thing.
And
you know.
I was pumped. And I was
Yeah.
willing to do whatever it took to make the crowd love me.
Yeah.
It's great that you can just
Merciless.
riff off of that. It's almost like a jazz musician when you're not like doing an act or like reading a script. You just riff and you come. I could just see talking to you. You're
Right.
just
Riffing.
so
You
good
just
at it.
you have to realize that what you're trying to bring out, it's like popping a pimple, is if everyone is thinking the same thing. The problem is when these comedians go on autopilot and they just get up there and they
Right.
won't let the audience in. And we all, when if we have a voice to use, if there's some collective thing that is happening in the room
You gotta
or
use
you have to use it. You have to acknowledge it.
And for us as musicians,
I was going to say the
constantly-
same thing. We
Right.
have to play to the audience. We
Right.
can't just go in and do the 40 songs that we prepared.
Right, because there are bands that just know their sets, and whatever the audience is, they play their sets no matter how inappropriate it might be. Whereas we gig hosts,
Well, we just did a gig in a resort where we just did songs we never do, individually and collectively,
Right.
just to have some fun, And it's
but
like-
also we had
and
those,
then we had the ZZ Top road crew.
yeah, and well, not literally, but sort of. So we were doing Sharp Dressed Men, and of course they were screaming for Freebird, so we did that, But
Which
yeah,
is great.
Same thing that
Being
you're talking
flexible.
about, right? You got to be.
And it's what we were
fun.
talking about earlier, being flexible to learn new things, being flexible to try new things. I think that is what being an artist is.
Right.
Like we all have this idea of what we want to do. And like with gig hosts, you have to make a living. Like
Right.
I've written billboards and copy for gardening gloves and pest control ads. Like
Right.
I'll do anything that fulfills a creative itch for writing or performing.
I have a question. Do you worry, because I just went to the ASCAP membership meeting yesterday, do you worry about AI taking over some of the writing? And you must.
It
right?
already is.
It already is.
It already is.
So tell me, do you have in your mind a gig that was so bad that it changed your trajectory, or it taught you something that you didn't know? And you can say you don't.
What's that?
You can say that you don't. but
No,
often
I
people
don't think
do.
there are any. So I did so many. Yeah, basically, I did warm up for TV chat shows. I did so many things, and I had some difficult jobs. But you know this: the difficult jobs teach you so much.
Right. Okay, so
know?
then we're going to go to this final question, which I ask everybody. So you were how old when you did what you would consider your first real gig?
First real. Gig.
Well, at the point at which you were on a stage.
You were paid.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was being paid in junior high school to write articles for the local paper.
Okay, that's
so that's
good.
a first
That's
writing
good.
gig.
That's good. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm saying the gig at which you had a glimmer of you could do this for a living. So however old you were when you got that thought, and now you're here, what would you tell her that you wished she had known then? And would you tell her to do it anyway? And if there are other young women out there or young people thinking of going into this line of work, what advice would you have for them?
Well, I counseled a couple of people who are very successful now who are women a tiny bit younger than me to just have the guts and get up and to tell them it still is true that I did find that men would get up and they wouldn't be very good, but they would keep getting up, right?
So
And
they had
there's-
more confidence about
They had
it.
more confidence. There's something about women, they really care about what the audience thinks. And we could make a little analogy to how much men can enjoy sex, even if the other person isn't enjoying it at times. I'm not saying all men. Hashtag not all men. But you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
the advice to my younger self is the same that I gave these women who are a little bit younger than me is don't wait.
Right.
Don't wait until you're good enough. You're good enough.
Right.
Just keep getting up.
Right.
Keep exercising that muscle.
Right.
Like art is a muscle. We have to keep it in tune, as you guys do. Keep trying new things. Keep saying yes. Keep experimenting. And what I would say to younger self is, have the confidence to get up sooner. I think
Right.
the other thing is there were certain hurdles I couldn't get over. Like I got a lot of performing opportunities, but I couldn't get the writing opportunities. And I think that's, as a woman,
Yeah.
the boys kept giving each other, oh yeah,
But I think-
they're looking for packets.
I think that's changing.
Could I? Oh, it absolutely is. But could I have knocked harder? Could I have not accepted that?
And also, every artist is intrinsically an artist and not a salesperson or a business person. So I think that's always
That's a
hard.
good, great
Yeah,
point.
and I think I was always better, and I still am at pitching other people than pitching myself.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of like the mom vibe. I really love elevating other people. I really love getting other people to get work and creating a space.
Wow, that's great.
That's it.
Yeah. No, that's really great because most people are very selfish about that. You know, they don't want.
But I should have been more selfish, but that's not me, and
Right.
it feels better to.
Yeah.
By the way, I got a lot of job ops, and if I thought I knew a person who is better than me,
You would
I
recommend
gave
them?
the job away.
We do that.
I gave a job I could have had when I needed jobs.
Right.
So I think that's a little weird, but I wouldn't. If I could turn back time, I wouldn't change anything.
Okay. Well, we could do this for another hour easy, but we can't because Marla's a gig ho and she has a gig tonight.
In an hour.
In an
Wow.
hour. You
We'll
have to leave
in an
You have
hour.
to leave in an hour. Right.
You're terrific.
Because
by the
Marla
way.
has a gig.
You guys are terrific.
Thank you. We're all terrific. Thank you so much for schlepping. And I should tell you, audience, that it wasn't so easy because Susie came from Jersey and then there was a massive subway fail.
Oh, you saved me. She
And-
saved me.
And then I had to come and rescue you in Long Island City. But, you know, so glad
Thank you for that.
Well, just so glad you actually did make it. Marla's clapping.
Me too.
Okay, so we like to say, God, there's so much we didn't get to, but we like to say, may your gigs be plentiful.
And may AI not take you over.
They took our jobs. and we are the Gig Hoes.
The Gig Hoes podcast is produced and recorded by Marla Joe and Willa Basson, also known as The Gig Hoes. Thanks to Doodle for the opening voiceover.